Hello, this is Mr. McMurray, and we are talking about the Plate Boundaries and Interactions Lab. Um, Basically, this one doesn't have a whole lot of tools and things like that. It's mostly looking at some interactive things, and we'll look at some of those real quick. First, it starts with just pictures and asks you some things about that. This kind of touches back on what we talked about on the last video that kind of overlap a lot. What's happening to the mantle material when it goes from A to B, and then B to C, and C to D, and D to A. Okay, in fact, I think that same question probably was on that one. And as well, perhaps as this one. The layers outside the mantle, okay, are the upper layers, the crust, and basically um, we are it just wants to know which ones are more inside. So this thing toward the center, and this is toward the outside. I say that just because I did it and did it wrong the first time. So be careful about that. All right, then talking about the crust, what are the kinds of crust, two types of crust. Okay, out of that list, pick those. All right, then we start doing the embedded contents. Okay, and first thing I just ask you like what data types are available. So once you do it, you can basically pick your data type, see which things are available. All right, plate boundaries, things like that, volcanic, earthquakes, plate movement, plate names, continents, etc. And you can see what's available there. All right, and you get that to get it out of the way if you need to. All right. Now, once you start doing this, it'll tell you which ones to click on and so forth. But if you, let's just say earthquakes are on there, okay. If you hit the play button, first of all, I would recommend that you find the, I had trouble finding it. It's all the way over here to the right. If you scroll over to the right, there's this button, which makes it show up on the whole screen, which makes it much easier to see. Okay. And then if you hit the start, it will start popping up all these different, in this case, I believe I had earthquakes clicked. All right. And it will show all the earthquakes. Okay. If you have volcanoes, it will also show, I believe, little triangles, if I remember right. If you're in doubt, there's always these kind of things. It will tell you the color of the boundaries. Yellow ones are convergent, blue are transform boundaries, and this color, it looks gray to me, but it's probably green. I'm not very good with colors because I'm colorblind, and this is not. But anyhow, are divergent boundaries. So if you just look at, if you go back to the restart and just look at it where you have just the boundaries, you can see the different colors by what kind they are. Once the dots start popping up here, the color tells you how deep in the earth those are, and the size of the dot tells you the magnitude, okay, on the Richter scale. All right, so that's kind of the information you're going to be seeing, and basically on that, you're going to be answering all the questions that you get. Like I said, very important. If you scroll over to the right, now usually you have to close these little things here, any of the little menus, and scroll over to the right to get to the full screen, and then of course you can always use that to get back to this. Okay. Um, yeah, you can do whichever works best for you. Also, keep in mind there is at the top you have an option inline, which means the videos take the whole screen up, and then the questions are underneath it. Uh, problem with that is you have a question and you scroll back up here to look at it, but it is a bigger picture. So if you want to do that, or if you do where it says split question, then it's off to the side. So whichever works best, and it may be better for some questions one way and some questions the other way. It's just up to you. But just some things you can play around with. Okay. They're going to ask you some of this. Actually, which one's the most dense? You look over here. Which one's the most thick? Oldest? You just look over here and answer the questions off that. That's pretty straightforward. Once again, you have a simulation again. You're going to click on it. Once again, same kind of data, same thing. There's your data types. You will pick which data types it tells to. It's on relief map. It will tell you which color they are by elevation. Obviously, the oceans are going to be the lowest, so they're blue. But then the green and tan, I can't tell you. They did apparently. I don't see those colors correctly, but you just experiment with it. You got several submissions there, so if you miss it the first time, just go back and fix it. Okay. Anyhow, then ask you some questions based on that picture. All right. And so forth. Okay. Then same thing here. Pretty much that's what the strategy is for a lot of those for their simulations. Now, this one's a picture, and they've given you this, and they basically want you to describe how these mountains form, okay, and which of these descriptions best. Once again, here we go. They start doing this. They're going to start asking you, giving you pictures, asking what kind of boundary. That's where you look at the key, and it tells you what color the boundary is. Will tell you that. Crust, obviously, you just look at it, and then you decide, is it continental, oceanic? Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Which one goes underneath the other one, and so forth. Okay, that's all pretty straightforward. Now, another thing they will have are these cross sections, where they have, here's basically what's happening, where 1, 2 is going underneath number 1. So these two crust 1 and crust 2, see water up here. So these are both in the ocean. And then they want you to describe what's happening here. Okay, and you have these choices here. A couple extras, but the rest of them are all going to be used. So it's just a matter of getting them in the right order. It may take a time or two to get it exactly, tweak the order. But if you look at it by the how many years ago it was, here's the first, then this one, then it comes over here, then it comes over here. Okay, and that will help you get those in the correct order. Okay, then we go once again to another embedded content, where it shows you the earthquakes and the boundaries and so forth, and more of that. Once again, here's the different first, second, third, and fourth, how these things occur over time, and it's going to eventually, I'm going to want you to put those in order over here. Okay, launch embedded content. Just for the record, this is the Red Sea right here. I know when I was looking at these, I got in problems because I would scroll out and then I couldn't scroll back into the spot where I wanted to, and stuff like that. My advice is just to go back to the beginning of the video, start all over again, and zero in on where you need to go. Okay, or if you have to, even do it as here. Or that might be where the inline question view may be useful, because it's going to show it bigger picture, stuff like that. So it's actually a bigger picture, and you might not even have to scroll in or out and just look at that. Okay, that's just my suggestions. Once again, you get those pictures there and put them in the order that they happen in. Then finally we get to California. All right, you're looking at these boundaries here, particularly right there on El Centro. Okay, and so forth. And it's going to ask you questions about that. Okay, another question which I haven't really talked about, but it will say when you run through the volcanoes and the earthquakes, where do they occur? Are they on the boundary? Are they between the boundary? Or there's no earthquakes? Volcanoes can occur near the boundary or away from, or there's no volcanoes. Okay, and so forth. Deeper, shallower for the earthquakes, things like that. And once again, that's where you're going to have to run the simulation and then look at the dots and use the key. Okay, it's going to show you how deep they are and stuff like that. Okay, by the different colors, there's a thing. There's a couple questions here putting it all together. Now, this is like if you took a cross section of the area from one place to another, and this shows all the different earthquakes, the size based on the big of the circle, the magnitude, and they also show the depth by the color. All right, and they show this one. All right, and you have this one, and basically it says, based on this, which one do you think is a boundary type where convergent boundary, where one is being subducted under the other? Okay, and based on what you've learned, I think you'll be able to pick that up. All right, and then the last thing is, where do you find these different types of features? Are you going to find them at a transform boundary, and you'll pull that up there, or a convergent boundary, or a divergent boundary? All right, and that kind of summarizes it, because that's what we want to see. We see where all the earthquakes and volcanoes occur around the boundaries, and we want to see what kind of features do you find at each boundary, and that's kind of the whole point of the lab. All right, hopefully you have a good time with that. If not, once again, if you have troubles, let me know, and enjoy.